Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Navah Hopkins, evangelist at Optmyzr, and we will discuss what you need to know about paid media's constant innovation. You know, common to talk about tactics and tools and features, but no one is really talking about innovation, which is why you guys must be picked here. If you're ready, let's get into it. Nava, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing marvelously well. It is a glorious autumn day in Rhode Island. I'm sitting at my work from home office with my puppies. It's a great way to send off into the weekend. So I'm delighted to be here with you.
That's awesome. As a man of faith myself, I love the words marvelous and glorious. So thanks for sharing that. Anyway, let's talk about you. Weather aside, let's talk about you, your career, your background, your role. How did you get to where you are today? Which is a very good career story. So I can't wait for our people to hear.
So I'm actually going to backtrack way back
Please.
to what my initial ambition was going to be. And that was I really wanted to be a high school English teacher. Since the third grade, it is all I wanted. I wanted to be an English teacher. And then I actually went to school for it and realized two really important things. I would be poor and ineffective in the current education system. And so I had an amazing conversation with a relative that was like a not necessarily a come to Jesus moment, but kind of a Palpatine Anakin moment of Nava, like embrace your dark side. You were born to be a marketer. Like go do marketing.
Embrace the backside.
So I ended up transferring to Emerson, which is where I started my career in marketing, and was actually really nice. Is that while I was in school, I was able to get my Google Ads certification, started taking on some freelance clients while I was in school. Actually began working for an SEO company, which is what really gave me a great exposure to kind of the nuts and bolts of how websites work. But I kind of didn't love what was going on with SEO at that time. Like this was just at the start of the first Penguin and Panda updates, and things were weird. So I ended up actually taking a year and a half off from marketing. Started a failed nonprofit called Angel Ed, which was meant to help students be as debt-free and employable as possible, kind of combating the student loan issue in the States. And
Yeah.
I learned
Which is still a problem, by the way. Anyway.
yes, it is still a problem. But what's really interesting is that even though it was a failed nonprofit, I got such an amazing education of what to do and what not to do when it comes to business operations, that when it came time for me to kind of jump back with marketing, and that's where I worked at WordStream for 5 years. I then started my consultancy where I did some freelance work for different SaaS companies. I started off the paid arm for a tech SEO company, and now I'm finally at Optmyzr, which is an amazing home. I am in love with all of our innovation and ethics combined. I kind of came full circle of I get to teach, but I also get to be effective, and I get to be profitable while making other people profitable. So that's my journey.
Yeah, your teaching skills are not in vain, if I would say that. I sometimes what comes to my mind, when I was very, very young is can you spell hippopotamus? Mm. Back in Nigeria, section of Nigerians love to go to school. All I have is a BSc, but my relatives, nearly 90% have like multiple second degrees and stuff like that. So education is good. If you're listening, guys, go to school. Okay. So
Well, go to
anyway,
school, but know what you want to go to school for. Like that's the thing. Like there are so many brilliant people who don't have that secondary degree. Like I just have a BA. I don't even have a BS. I've Bachelor of the Arts. Um, you gain experience, and you ultimately will position yourself to get those same jobs. And yeah, it might be a little bit tougher. You might have to be a little bit scrappier, but only go for that secondary degree if you're actually going to use it and you have a use for it, mainly the network, and maybe
yeah,
some additional skills.
yeah, I was going to do an MBA. So I have a couple of courses, of course, one from Columbia University, I was going to do an MBA, and my boss, who I consider my mentor, all my bosses are mentors,
Oh, that's
uh,
wonderful.
he said, why not try a podcast? You interview people like, Navah Hopkins, and you learn what is not in the MBA syllabus. And I thought that was a good idea. So with 100 episodes and counting, I probably can stand side by side with an MBA holder, I guess. So
Well, your teacher slash mentor is very clever because people love talking about themselves. And so you're basically like, tell me about yourself. Tell me all of the amazing things. And so you're gonna get that people may charge several $100s per hour for consulting. You're getting for free and you're amplifying and sharing. So it's very clever.
exactly, exactly. So back to the episode, guys. I know you've been enjoying that, but there's more fun on the way. With your work at Optmyzr, of course, I have looked into this amazing, ecosystem you guys have, and there's something that many other, companies can learn from. But there was something I found, in
Mhm.
terms of how you aggregate from different ad sources to, create these great experiences, not just for the marketers, but for the clients on behalf of which you run those ad campaigns. And that's the inclusion of channels like Bing and Yahoo Japan, and some of the other channels that are not very popular in this side of the world, or not don't have as much market share. So is Optimizer getting value in terms of usage with those platforms or with those channels? Should we? I guess your reply would be a reflection of what listeners should look at in the industry. But what is Optimizer doing in regards to those platforms, and are there any tractions at all?
So what's really interesting about Optmyzr and why they got me to say yes, because I was actually doing my own thing, and then they got me to come in house for them, specifically Fred Vallis did, is Optmyzr helps you manage your Google, your Microsoft, your Amazon, your Meta, your Yahoo Japan, regardless of what strategy or structure you want to manage. And we include all of those channels because we see that there are certain innovations that they're doing that are really incredible and powerful. I'm happy to talk about those in a little bit. But the main reason we'll add a channel is actually because our customers ask for it, or our customers are struggling to achieve what they want to achieve with a Google only attitude. And they end up benefiting from the Amazon one. So, for example, with Microsoft, one of the reasons that Microsoft is so incredibly useful is that it has slightly subtle rules of engagement than Google. And so when we built rules and Optimizer Express suggestions and using our rule engine to actually be able to optimize for the ideal target cost per acquisition or the ideal target ROAS for Microsoft, it helps people who otherwise would just put their Google stuff right on Microsoft and then they'd
Yeah.
fail and then they do badly to actually succeed at Microsoft. With Amazon, I am in absolute love. I don't fall in love easily with a tool in marketing, but like I am in love with the audiences and the ethics driven ad tech that Amazon is doing when it comes to audiences and advertiser agency protection.
Mhm.
There are some really exciting updates coming there, specifically for the non endemic Amazon. So if you're a service based company in the auto field, travel, education, local services, being able to actually target those Amazon audiences is incredibly useful. And this is, again, one of the areas where Optmyzr can empower you to succeed. From the Yahoo Japan standpoint, this speaks more to the fact that Optmyzr can help regardless of what vertical and what country you're in. We had a very big enterprise customer come to us and say, listen, we need this. This is really
Yeah.
critical.
I think it's the biggest marketing channel in Japan. I used to, when I still work for them part time, a translation company, and they
Mhm.
wanted to go into Japan, and we researched and found that that is the biggest, is bigger than any channel. So anyway, just by the side point.
And that's the thing, like, if you assume that PPC is just Google, you're going to leave behind so much money. And if you don't communicate with the customers in the way that they want to be communicated with on those different channels, you're going to leave behind so much money. So The reason why Optmyzr builds for all of those channels, not just Google first or Google only, is because we know that to serve our customers, which are in-house brands as well as agencies, we have to enable them to succeed where they want to succeed. So it's a very big reason why we build across all of those.
Interesting. Okay. Still diving into your experience here at Optmyzr. I'm a fan of educational studies, and that makes sense with your educational background or interest. And I learned about what your team is doing in terms of studying, smart bidding with Google Ads and some of the other things as well, like audience matching and things like that. Do you want to tell us about that research?
Yeah,
What were the significance of that, and was there any AI bit in that research? Because I'm really interested
that's a
in how
great question. No one's
Google
asked me that.
AI is. Yeah, please. Google AI, they keep saying it's time for Google AI. A lot of things is changing. What are you guys seeing? What are you guys projecting? And what's happening with your study?
So what's really interesting in the study had to do with match types and bidding
Okay.
strategies. And the beginning of the study, and this was way back at the beginning of the year when we started ideating it, is are certain markets more advanced in terms of adopting PPC tactics that Google recommends, i.e., broad match, smart bidding, so on and so forth. And we looked at it from a country standpoint, but then we realized, you know what, there's a bigger question here. Is how does broad match actually perform as a match type versus exact? And the reason we looked at broad match versus exact is because, to be quite frank, there wasn't enough statistical significance behind phrase match usage being included. So we actually compared broad match performance in the same account to exact match performance in the same account. Both had the benefit of branded, so we didn't filter out branded. They both got that lift, but we
Yeah,
did
okay.
look at volume. And what was very interesting is that exact match, granted, broad match was always in those accounts. So this isn't to say that you should pause broad match, but it was kind of not a frustrating moment, but a real I gotta swallow this pill and own that I advised a strategy that was less than correct, going all in on broad when exact match did so well. And that was a very important lesson that it's okay to be incorrect about a specific tactic because things are constantly changing. What's more critical is that the logic of how you get there and the data that informs you is correct. So what we found is that exact match had better conversion volume, better click volume. It had cheaper cost per click. It had cheaper cost per acquisition. I mean, click theory and conversion rate was kind of expected, but the ones that were surprising were in particular with the conversion volumes. And what that did is it actually shattered this idea that you have to eat expensive cost per acquisitions or eat expensive clicks just to get good value.
Yeah.
And that played out as well in the bidding piece. So looking at max conversion values and max conversions, I kind of assumed that because people are lazy at their core or they're scared and they don't want to adopt net new things, that max conversion value would lose because they would have incorrect conversion values or they'd set wrong settings. But it turned out that max conversion values actually had the better conversion volume, the better cost per click, the better cost per acquisition, like all of the metrics were favored max conversion value. And this played out in low spending accounts as well as high spending accounts. And what that means, Optmyzr, the tool, we won't actively pursue you to become a customer unless you're, I mean, you can obviously sign up, but we're not going to chase you unless you're spending at least $10,000 a month in ad spend.
Mm.
That means the accounts that we had that were low spending were $10,000 a month or less. So people that they got value out of our tool, we don't actively sell to them. So it's kind of there's going to be a lot of low spending tiers lumped in there. Everyone else was $10,000 plus, but we did pull out really high spending accounts. And why that's important is that outliers will spike your data. So just in terms of how you
Yeah.
think about data analysis, oftentimes you have to trade the in-depth specifics that you trust implicitly exactly what happened for the scale of being able to look at how many accounts and how much you trust the data. And it's actually been some really interesting conversations I've had since we released the study. And I think one of the things that people kind of need to reconcile is take in studies like the ones that we put out as this is more of a temperature check on the industry. This is
Yeah.
not a mandate saying you need to go change what you're doing right
Silver
now.
bullet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem though, Nava, is that you have this, I speak to them every day. Um, Google Ads, in the case of Google Ads, even Facebook does it. All the support strategies, right? With all due respect, telling you, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. Sometimes you wonder, did you actually check my account? So in the case of broad match, for example, I run is a very small business campaigns, but I have ad groups for each match type. And I try to have the different, so that way I'm able to compare. But then you say, oh, Google is recommending that you should use broad match. I'm like, I'm already testing broad match. So I know you guys are saying broad match is getting better, and I've seen some of that work in some accounts, but it doesn't work everywhere. I think is what Nava is trying to say here. And yes,
And
what I do have access to that research somewhere. Maybe we can add to the show notes as well. Where can people find that research?
so it's a link on our site of the broad match bidding strategy study. But the thing that I was going to say is that I personally hate match type specific ad groups and campaigns. I think that they're
Mhm.
annoying, blah, blah, blah. They work great for some people. So rather than getting into a debate around structure or strategy or like what works, what doesn't, the
Yeah,
far more important thing to take is, do you run a campaign that is working for you and the time you have to run it? So one of the reasons that people tend to either lean very aggressively into broad match or very aggressively into the exact or freeze is the perception of how much time do I have to actually manage these campaigns. And yeah, you
yeah,
can use a tool like Optmyzr or other tools. I don't want to make
yeah.
this all an Optmyzr plug fest, but um, if
Blockquest.
you if you have the time to micromanage every single little thing and you have those automations set up and you have the budget to support all of those campaigns and ad groups, have fun, live your best life. But for most people and for most brands, you're going to struggle if you over segment. And this is true also for
Ah,
the ad networks because they need enough fuel and enough data to actually run. So
mm,
as you think about Google and also other ad networks, the most important thing to remember is conversion thresholds are mission
yeah,
critical, and they're
mm,
even more mission critical in this privacy first world where we might have to model some of our data. So the more that you segment and the more that you split your data really thin, the harder the ad network is going to, the harder time the ad network is going to have to actually make your campaigns run. So it's
yeah.
all a balancing act.
And you're right about that. I mean, that's usually the starting points, right? Because we don't know the kind of, it looks like the kind of intent, the type of intent, and I will say I'll, you know, consider match types as intent. The kind of intent is different for each industry, for each business, whether it's B2B or B2C. So at the beginning, you're trying to test which one marketers should lean onto. And on my perspective, by using those three in within a short time, I don't know, by 1 month sprint or 2 months sprint or whatever it is, you're able to say, okay, you're getting more value from this type of match type. And, you can, throw in more resources into that. But on the display side or the brand side, there's a lot going on as well. And I just want to remind you about that question on not just Google, but all the other platforms, I must say. AI. AI is saying it's not about keywords, it's about intent signal.
I
Um,
100%
y-
agree.
and
1000%
and
agree.
stuff like that, right? So how big is this whole AI thing going to change PPC in general? What are some of the things that, I guess, from a targeting perspective, we will explore other aspects. But from a targeting perspective, what are some of the things that you think, AI will help us do, and we don't have to worry about anymore? And in general, what do you just think? It's a very fuzzy question. My apology.
I actually think it's important to bucket. the AI pieces into the tasks we perform versus the like how much we lean into the ad platform, because those are two different conversations. So for example,
Yeah.
you can use AI and ChatGPT to help you come up with ad creative. You can use it to help you parse through large swaths of data. Like there's a number of things that you can functionally do.
Mhm.
Then there's also the AI or the machine learning of broad match and how audiences are baked in, how the algorithm plays there. There's a number of things from a performance max standpoint, how your budget gets allocated. So there's a number of different ways to think about AI. At the heart of it, it really comes down to what are the tasks that you're completing. So people often will ask, is manual bidding dead? I don't think it's dead, but I think it's not viable at scale. There are going to be certain verticals that have to do manual bidding because there isn't enough search volume to make it run. But for
Yeah.
the most part, you should be using some degree of automated or smart bidding. Automated bidding does not rely on conversions. Smart bidding does. So it's automated bidding is going to be max clicks with a bid cap or target impression share. Smart bidding is going to be max conversions or max conversion values with goals or not. And
Yeah.
you can create your own automation with bidding tools and budget pacing tools. I'm not going to go again into what Optmyzr could do. If you want to find that out, definitely check it out. But there's also a slew of other tools that you can explore. But when it comes down to the actual question of is AI replacing the marketer or is AI changing the job? Changing the job, 1,000% replacing, absolutely not. At one of the, or I think it was last year's Google Marketing Live, and this is recorded in 2023, so I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
this will be released in 2024. Um, the Google Marketing Live talked about conversational campaign creation, and
Mm.
that's huge. Can you imagine how many brands that would otherwise have to slave away at a campaign just to have the template set up and then they could just audit it and edit it? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But on the
Yeah.
flip side, there are some enterprise or high legal restriction brands that will never ever be able to release campaigns that don't go through every single stage of approval. So this is not to say that AI is fully replacing you. This is not to say that you don't have to do your job. Just be aware that depending on the vertical that you work in, you may
Mm.
be able to take advantage of certain tools, you may not, and that all AI does is take the data that you give it and spit back things at you. So my favorite thing to make fun of actually, or to get not make fun of, but to giggle at, is when people point to look at this horrible ad that Google made with AI. Well, Google made that ad based off of the assets from your site or from
Yeah.
your existing creative. So if you
Input.
don't love
Yeah.
it, that's maybe a sign to take a look at your own campaigns.
Yeah.
It's a tool, it's a tactic I actually advise quite a bit on the SEO side of run your site through dynamic search ads and see what does Google come up in terms of crawling your site. If you love what comes up, amazing. If you don't, probably a sign to look at your content and your tagging.
Yeah. 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 That so insightful stuff. And I will add to in terms of AI replacing PPC manager's job. I think being the strategist matters a lot because as a strategist, you're able to tell the machine your direction, your vision, and all this, planner tools that we have. And also it's garbage in, garbage out these days. So your brief must be as detailed as possible. Your
Mhm.
assets must be as detailed and structured as possible. And that could really, really help in your paid media success. But I'll still like us to stay on that thought here. I plan to ask this later, but I'll ask it now. What are some of the other PPC workflows that you think people can take advantage of? I will give you an example of one
So
that we
one
use.
thing I
No,
think.
you go ahead and I'll give my
Oh, no,
example
no, go
after.
ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I
Okay.
missed you.
Yeah. No. So as you know, demand gen is out, replace discovery, and the good thing with demand gen is that we can now change language and location at the ad group level. That makes sure that we are not enslaved to DV360 and all those very expensive partner fees. I dare say that on camera from my experience. Um, but it's you can still control budgets at the out group level. So I use an automated rule to pause campaigns if a budget reaches a certain threshold or if it reaches a certain conversion threshold. I do that for some campaigns already. So that's an automated way, and that could be used through third-party apps from like Optmyzr and some of the other apps out there. But what are some of the typical standard flows that you think PPC managers should be thinking about at the moment that they are not already using?
I love that you brought up demand gen because that is the first campaign type where we actually feel Google branching out into social because you're right, it's the control at the ad group level.
Mm.
I think the very first workflow is building in a certain degree of PPC insurance. What are the checks that you have in place to protect against a glitch on the ad platforms? Because those happen. Like we're as of this recording in the fall of 2023, there is a glitch going on where there's under overspending or ads getting disapproved right, left, and center.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so
and
and I know this is not part of the episode, but I'm speaking to an expert on camera about something I'm facing recently, like especially with display campaigns. Like you do say $50 per day. It doesn't run for like even after learning period, it doesn't run for like 7 days. And then on the 8th day, you get like a 300 spend. And it's
and
like
that
somebody is managing the data secretly at the top. Okay.
So it's interesting that there's bugs and then there's the actual how the algorithm is supposed to work. So it's like bugs and feature enhancements. So the PPC insurance that I'm talking about is those protections in place to stop you from overspending on a given day and to adjust your bids and things like that. And that can be done manually, can be done through a tool, whatever. But what you were just talking about is the ad platforms have built in kind of rules of engagement that it will average out what you say your daily spend should be across 13.4 days. So if you do budget pacing tactics where you kind of go really aggressive during certain bits and then pull it way back, that's going to adjust how it spends. In addition, if you have super low spend or volume and then it finally has an opportunity, it's going to go very aggressive. It's like, well, I didn't spend for 8 days. I have the extra budget to spend because you told me you're prepared to spend this amount across 30.4 days. So that is actually more of a feature. And I think it comes down to people need to be mindful that when you set a budget, it may not ever spend that. It's totally possible if you're in a low search volume area or if you're doing something like local service ads where you kind of have to set
Yeah,
a very aggressive budget.
yeah,
But for everything else, you set a budget, you should be prepared if the ad network spends it. And what I will say is that during learning periods, that is when you should expect the most fluctuation. If you are seeing overspending in an established, fully kitted out campaign, then yeah, that's probably an issue. But that's again where those protections come in place. The other really critical workflow that I think not enough people look at is actually the change history, because the change history will document what changes were made by you, what changes were made by a machine, what changes were made by a Google rep, what changes were made by a software, all of those things. And you can use additional analysis to see what the impact of those were. That's definitely a piece to consider. Finally, because I don't want to get too into tactics, although if
yeah,
right is there, I will happily do it, is actually looking at your search terms by what the search term said, but the keyword didn't include it. And why this is so powerful is understanding, are you bidding on the right terms to get you the
yeah,
best possible traffic? So
yeah,
people tend to, and this is a pet peeve of mine, for people that do it and it works great for you, amazing, but it's a pet peeve of mine in account management. People will bid on every single possible idea. And then it's like, well, the data then tells me what I should pause. Well, with how close variants work, you're kind of dooming 90% of your account because this 10% is gonna run with it. So I
yeah,
would strongly recommend looking at keyword champions as opposed to bidding on everything and then look at your search terms to see how it plays out, or
yeah,
use dynamic search ads to teach you that. If
yeah,
you're doing performance max, obviously you can just apply this winning search terms as an audience signal, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I would definitely be mindful about what is happening in your account that you don't intend to happen in your account. Like just do those spot checks.
Hmm. I'm guilty of that. Let's run. I think I would. It depends on whether it's B2B or B2C. I can't remember now. I think if it's B2C, B2B, I would have a very small list, champion keyword, then expand from there. But if it's B2C, let's draw in 100 keywords or something like that, and then let them sort themselves out. And then but now I've been doing a lot of SEO strategy, and that has brought me back into the culture of actually looking at keywords, and even in the D2C, having a much tighter keyword and have all those recommendations, like you said, which often ties with the quarterly search trends on the Google space. You can stay up to date with the demand that is going on. So that makes a lot of sense. Before we go on our commercial break, I'd like to ask you a question about the recommendations in general across ad platforms. And I'm sorry to use this, but we just have to continue the uh plug feast or what. I can't remember what you
Oh
said.
no,
Yeah,
whatever will I hear? What are we
we
talking
just
about
have
my
to go.
company?
Yeah, we have to continue that. So you've got I know there are other tools, but I know that you guys also have this feature whereby you get a lot of recommendations. It's more like, maybe Google or Meta recommendations or steroids, because those ones are very limited, some of them not accurate. But with your tool and many other tools like it, like WhatsApp, for example, you can look at the campaign and look at many other things that could be improved outside of what, these other platforms would recommend natively. Uh, what what is the key to that? Why is that really, really important in general? And what are some of the other magical things that Optmyzr
Magical
can
thing.
do?
I like the use of the word magic because there is magic in the world. Magic is simply just things that we don't understand, that science hasn't defined yet. So yes,
Yeah.
there's magic still in the world. Um,
Oh.
so we'll address recommendations and then I'll talk about Optmyzr because the first one's a little bit more important.
Yeah. Okay.
So when we look at ad platform recommendations, there is no single ad platform that makes a recommendation strictly from a place of malice or trying to get all your money. There is exactly zero of them that do that.
That is
All
always my
have,
belief, but
have a
I'll say you said so.
well. Here's why. If the recommendations were purely to like, I'm going to get all your money, I'm going to do all these things, well, you would leave. Like you would eventually see that it's a bad plan. And yeah, there are a lot of people that say, "Oh, ha ha ha, I don't want to use automated recommendations." But one of the good things about automated recommendations is that they give you a spot check of what are things to consider in looking at your account. So even if you don't apply them, you review them and you can get a sense of what's going on in the account. And by the way, there are some recommendations that you should apply. So, for example, if you have competing negative keywords or like overlapping keywords, that's a totally helpful thing to understand. So, I would definitely recommend looking at your recommendations. I would definitely recommend not having it on auto apply. Like, you want to evaluate. Now, with Optmyzr, and just kind of sharing for the podcast audience, in the preparation for this, I kind of warned Dots that I would take issue with referring to Optmyzr express suggestions or alerts as recommendations because Optmyzr at the end of the day, we don't actually push any particular dogma of how an account should behave. What we do is you tell us how should your campaigns be performing? What are the metrics that you expect should happen? And if they're missing or they're not quite hitting those metrics, we'll then alert you to it. And you can make changes or not. So for example, our URL checker, you can have that on auto apply where if there's a broken link or a product's out of stock, yeah, auto pause that campaign, and then when it's back up and running, it re-enable it. Or you can have it on preview mode where we'll just alert you to that fact. We have our weather alert of pausing campaigns or enabling campaigns or bidding up or bidding down based off of weather.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that? Cool. Amazing. You just want to have it as an alert and you can then go in and make the choice yourself. That is absolutely okay. So Optmyzr comes from a place of automation layering and kind of that PPC insurance I was talking about earlier, and
Yeah.
far less from a you must do this because we say so. And in fact, one of the reasons that I am an Optmyzr evangelist, and I was before I even worked there, is because of how much freedom it enables the advertiser to set the structures for themselves for all the app platforms that we support.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, and that's incredible. People back in the day would you have to upload weather sheets, Google Sheets, to optimize campaigns, but you have a tool that does that, which is just awesome. So, thanks for sharing that, guys. I know this is very technical, but I hope you are enjoying it. For marketing leaders, this is also very important so that you have an idea of how things work. And so if you have direct line that are telling you stuff, you need to know if they are not just selling you BS, they are telling you actually the facts about the campaigns that they are running, the paid media campaigns that they run. And so if you're listening as well, please don't forget the Marketing Leadership Podcast review on Apple and Spotify, because that helps us a ton going forward. It's time for the Dots Rapid Fire, but before then, we will take a quick commercial break from our sponsor, and in a few seconds, we'll be right back to take Navah through the Rapid Fire. Stay with us. Welcome back. So it's the Dots Rapid Fire. It's a hot kitchen, hot marketing kitchen. It's also the marketing court of law. So pick your poison basically. It's 3 questions, Nava. I'm going to say the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, good. What is your best marketing KPI?
Is this for general marketing or is this for PPC?
Yeah, it could be general marketing as long as you don't mention revenue or sales, which is
Oh
lazy as
man,
well.
I was gonna say like a ROAS, obviously.
Oh.
I would say that one thing that kind of gets left behind is click-through rate to conversion rate. So if you have a really good click-through rate, but a really bad conversion rate, that's a sign that probably your landing page needs help or your shopping cart needs help. If your conversion rate is amazing, but your click-through rate is terrible, that's probably a sign that you're not budgeting enough for the right traffic. And if both are terrible, well, we're very sad and we have to do a whole bunch of fixing.
We have to cancel your department. Okay, just kidding. Anyway, second question. How long do you use social media every day?
So this is again where I'm like, what counts as social media? Because like, are we counting Discord as social media? Are we
Yes,
counting
we're
LinkedIn as social?
accounts forums. Yeah.
I probably am on social media at least 10 hours a day.
Yeah. But most of it is,
It's
which part
all
of
it's
it is
almost
work?
all for work or for video
Right.
games. Like it's a
Yeah,
combination.
well, you have a right to video games. I run YouTube all day, every day. I don't drink coffee. I have to listen to a documentary or music. So if somebody asks me, I wouldn't even, I would say that as a caveat. But like on LinkedIn or some of these other social platforms or sharing posts, yeah, it's probably maybe 1 hour, 2 hours. Sometimes I do get assistance, but you know it is a link. You gotta engage, right? You have to comment on other people's
Well, this
posts.
is where like if we're just saying like LinkedIn and Facebook, all those, then yeah, it's like maybe 2 hours a day. But if we're
Yeah.
including all the other things, then yes, I'm on there quite a
No,
bit.
I love documentaries. I would watch one every other day, and I listen to music all day long.
What kind
It's
of music?
I indie folk.
Nice.
I'm an indie folk guy, so very melancholic. But it helps. Yeah, it helps a lot. I haven't taken coffee in years. So yeah. Anyway, last question. What is your favorite marketing or business quote? We allow business,
I'm actually just going to say my mantra of
which is your quote, which is good.
do well by doing good. This was instilled in me by my father, and it's been my beating heart of you don't have to compromise your ethics to do well in business, and if you put good out into the world, good will come back to you. So do well by doing good.
I like that. I share that as well. I've always said it's good to help people. I always chastise this again. Paid ad supports people. Do you really? If you really want to help me, then you should know that I'm not ready to spend right now. If you really want to help me, then you know that that feature is not going to help. If you really want to help me, then you should go back and take a better look at your campaigns. And I tell that for different people, marketers, agency owners who try to be over sophisticated and things like that. It's all about helping. If you help, you grow, they grow, everyone is happy. And I like the way you landed there with ethics because my next question is about ethics. So, and that's the last question. Um, when it comes to the, content to market fit, how do you balance stakeholder expectations versus upholding ethical reporting standards in this new age of paid media innovation?
So that's a very big question that could have been the whole subject of an entire podcast. But since this is lightning round,
Yeah.
um, I'm very upfront with people. I let people know what is reasonable to expect, what is happening, what are the paths forward. And if folks are not prepared to engage in a meaningful ethical path, it's not the right, I'm not the right partner for you. When it comes to reporting, I firmly believe that all departments need to work together and share data. It definitely should not be siloed away.
Yeah. Commercial.
But a big part of that is understanding the technical changes that have to come into play. So ethics very rarely is a technical conversation, but it feels like it's becoming more and more of one, not because we want it to be, but because just the nature of our industry is shifting. So for example, if you want to have good attribution right now, you need to make sure that your UTM parameters are all set because iOS 17 just did away with the Gclid or the Facebook clid, Twitter clid, so on and so forth.
Mm,
Um, but part of that is attribution and your profit, but also part of it is the ethics of it. Of I am being honorable and I have integrity in my reporting and being transparent about the entire process. I'm firmly in the camp of you should own your ad account, you should own your analytics account. People that are helping you or should just be helping you. They should not hold it hostage or hold it over your heads.
mm.
Um, but yeah, it just be transparent, talk about what might happen, and all will be okay.
Yeah, yeah. All will be okay. Yeah, it's not easy, but I pride myself in it. If it's going to cost me the contract, it's going to cost me the contract. But I am not a fan of putting impressions because it's a very large number and people like to see large numbers. Because at the end of the day, they will ask you the next question. How is that affecting bottom line? So it's better to come with the bad news first to say, we had just one SQL or we had just a very good example is depending on when you're listening, we just had the Amazon Prime days and the results were not as I expected. But I am reporting it anyway. It's just what it is. I expected this number of sales on Amazon. It did not come, and this is how we move forward. So it's another very great conversations to have. But if it's someone that is meant for you, I mean someone by I mean stakeholder or client or user or business or customer, then they will stay with you for your ethics. So if you go to dotslovesmarketing.com right now, you see transparent digital marketing strategies. So it's very dear to me. Yeah. Anyway, I know we can go on and on. This has been really, really fun way to talk about the heavily technical subject. But thank you so much, Nava, for sharing your premium wisdom. And yeah, you've got a lot of experience, and I've learned so much even personally as well. Where can people find you, future, I guess, PPC directors?
Sure. So absolutely come check out Optmyzr. You also, I'm the Ask the PPC for Search Engine Journal. I do also contributions to Search Engine Land. You can follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I am on both Twitter/X as well as Threads. You can connect with me there. I'm always happy to help. And if you are interested in exploring Optmyzr, happy to also answer questions there. But even if you just want to talk about how can we address a PPC question, always happy to help there as well. Oh, I nearly forgot. Paid Search Association and Foxwell Founders, both are amazing PPC communities. Strongly recommend joining both. I'm on the board members for both of those, and they are great ways to learn and to share and to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And with that many shameless plugs, we have put an end to the episode now. That's all we have for you guys. If you want to see more, go to my website. I mentioned it before, dotslovesmarketing.com. Subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. You have to type Marketing Leadership on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. I'd like to thank Descript and Content Allies for their support. And don't forget to check out my new venture, listennetwork.co, if you would like to boost your podcast with predictable advertising. Till next episode, connect the dots.